Some stores have been sold out of items like hand sanitizer and face masks for several weeks, but now hygiene and cleaning supplies are also starting to disappear from shelves. Nikki Schenfeld has more.
One item that no one really can seem to find right now is toilet paper. CBS
Just as stores ran out of toilet paper early on in this pandemic, it's that there's been a total lack of
limit restriction. Nationwide, grocery stores are struggling to keep items on the shelf.
In 322 BC, Athenian orator Stratocles spread news that Athens had triumphed over the Macedonian general Antipater to win its freedom. The 2 days of celebrations which followed left the city undefended as the actually victorious Antipater closed in, arriving to found an oligarchy of the class in which Stratocles was a member. As World Bank alumnus Helena Basdi puts it, the Athenian democracy thus went down in a blaze of fake news. US President John Adams famously wrote in frustration, "There has been more new error propagated by the press in the last 10 years than in 100 years before 1798. Fake news is as old as time. The internet, however, is not.
So around 2000, the internet started to be something, right?
我们那时候的乐观的想象就是网络会让民主更民主，让参与这件事情变更容易，让传播讯息更容易。
Now everybody could speak and have their voice heard, and it would be this great now public sphere. And then the bad guys caught on.
When Euromaidan happened in 2013, we started to see a lot more of an intense use of online coordinated disinformation campaigns.
包含托美国总统大选以及台湾2018年的选举，其实都是有记录在这里面。
We're talking about, taking the bottom out from underneath democratic institutions.
这一套舆论战的方式，它的目的就是要打击民主国家，它是有特别针对民主国家做过客制化的，它是要利用民主国家多元的弱点，然后去做进攻。
And I'd be hard pressed to identify any other state in the world that is as subject to as intensive an authoritarian information operations campaign as is Taiwan.
台湾是连续9年以来全世界第1名受到境外势力的假讯息攻击。那这个境外势力是谁？不用我多说，大家都知道。
In 2022, 72% of the world's population were living under autocratic rule. In 2015, there were more countries autocratizing than democratizing for the first time since 1971. But while there is no single cause of this massive reversal, scholars are increasingly concerned by disinformation. In 2016, the Oxford Dictionary named post-truth its word of the year. A world of alternative facts and conspiracy theories seem to have leaked without warning from a different dimension, breaking down the barrier between truth and fiction in all of our own little universes. Research published in the authoritative journal Democratization reveals a steady, sustained increase in government-spread disinformation, which began all the way back at the turn of the millennium. Nowhere is this more immediate than Taiwan. For 6 years in a row, Taiwan has been breaking the democratization charts, landing far beyond any other nation in the scale and volume of disinformation attacks launched against it. More and more, we hear of an island democracy on the front lines of a global information war. More and more. But what damage can a war without weapons really inflict? Just what is disinformation?
In terms of the effectiveness of propaganda or disinformation in the last couple of election cycles, it's often hard to quantify.
that doesn't mean that it's not a broader threat to be concerned with.
我们通常在讲假讯息 fake news 的时候呢，其实它非常单纯，只是指涉这个讯息本身并没有反映到真实的情况，或者它不是事实。但是我们今天在讨论的事情呢，是有一个由国家资助的力量，它创造了一些非常虚假的一些账号或者是一些讯息，进到了民主的社会里面，试着要影响我们的选民。英文叫做 disinformation， 它的定义就是说有人蓄意的要去操弄 manipulate 一些讯息的情况，来让你误以为某些事情是真的。这个呢，我认为就是超越了这个民主社会可以容许的范围。
So you needn't worry. That distant relatives' dodgy Facebook posts are misinformation, with an M, false but not organized and generally not illegal. Disinformation is the coordinated use of information manipulation to intentionally undermine a target. Typically, this is the product of vast state-backed influence campaigns and the focus of media, including our own, attention.
So we see in our data across the world with all these countries that are autocratizing and getting worse on democracy. What happens first is that the spread of disinformation, all types of indicators of that, both foreign and domestic, go up. And then polarization increases.
最主要在打这个资讯作战或者说认知作战相关的国家有3大国那就是俄罗斯、中国跟伊朗。这3个国家是运用非常多的资源在做。
And the information that they're sharing is not necessarily demonstrably false.
They're not necessarily trying to convince Americans, let's say, of a specific worldview. They're trying to create more polarization. They're trying to create more conflict.
民主国家大家意见本来就可以不一样嘛，所以他就到处帮你放大这一种不一样，让你对民主制度失去信任。
In the U.S. context, it is tying together issues of Christianity and race. They're making references to aspects of history. They're invoking Christian morals and tradition because in terms of evolutionary psychology, if there have been hostile coalitions, our sense of the threat that they pose is going to activate us to defend ourselves and our way of life.
Disinformation is used as a tool to achieve extreme levels of polarization. Because when you have extreme polarization, then you're reaching levels where you start to talk about your political opponents as enemies. Right? What do you do with enemies of the nation? You close down their civil society organization, you close down their media or attack it, eventually prison or maybe kill them. So the spread of disinformation has that venomous effect of increasing polarization that can be used for derailing democracy and create autocracies.
In 2016, quantitative analysis by scholars at St. Andrews University revealed that democracies are more politically divided now than at any point in the last 50 years. The US House of Representatives is more polarized than at any point in its history. Public trust is eroding.
Another autocratic tactic is to spread not necessarily one message, but hundreds and hundreds of different messages.
They have the technique of flooding the zone. You just flood the information environment with so much misinformation and disinformation that it causes people to have less trust in every single piece of information they do receive.
People are now questioning, can I trust this source of information? Can I trust what I'm seeing with my own 2 eyes? Or do I have to do a reverse image search? Was this created by AI?
Democratic accountability depends on the truth. We need to know what politicians did. We need to know what they didn't do, and they need to be held accountable for that. But if you, with misinformation, disinformation, can eradicate that accountability.
If people don't trust in their institutions, if people don't trust in the information that they're receiving, if they feel like votes have been stolen for them, if they feel like they can't get good information anywhere, that's not good for democracy.
Why would you participate in a system if you feel that that system is somehow fraudulent?
In the United States, trust in the federal government declined from 54% in 2000 to less than 20% in 2021. This trend repeats across Africa, Latin America, much of Europe and Asia. But while polarization and public distrust are global issues, there is one corner of the world under heavier fire than anywhere else.
Really, Taiwan is subject to the most intensive information operations efforts that we can see in the world right now.
We reported on that in the 2019 Democracy Report, but it also remains true. Taiwan remains among the very top countries receiving the most disinformation from abroad in the world.
中共的官方机构长期的在尝试的介入台湾的公共讨论，在台湾的公共讨论里面造成台湾人对于民主治理的信心的动摇或质疑，这样子。
As far as which departments of the Chinese Communist Party are responsible for propaganda, again, I would say, well, virtually all of them. Xi Jinping has repeatedly stated that United Front work is an all-of-party effort.
And of course, that has a purpose to undermine the wish to keep freedoms and democracy in Taiwan.
所以台湾的人如果跟英国人或法国人一样对中国共产党没有戒心是不可以的。因为中国共产党并没有要侵略法国、侵略英国，而他想侵略台湾。
Going beyond that to ensure that Taiwan, as that annexed state, is under firm CCP political control.
But while disinformation and propaganda have long been weapons in China's toolbox, they haven't always been so effective.
不论是 information warfare 或者说 cognitive warfare psychological warfare 这些的特色都是它是比较西方的用语。其实真的要了解中国对台湾的进攻的话，用中国的用语才是会比较精确的。那我们现在讨论的就是第二个叫舆论战。中国的舆论战就是它要在台湾的内部去带动、去制造舆论。其实中国一直以来呢，它最擅长的其实就是去接触台湾地方上的宗教团体啊、里长啊、政治人物啊，然后再借由他们的嘴巴去散播谣言。那后来他就发现，媒体其实也很重要，因为台湾人民喜欢看电视，喜欢看政论节目，所以他更多的时候呢，统一战线的人开始会去接触媒体的人，希望媒体的人去散播有利中国的言论。但是因为2014年的太阳花运动，他们发现，怎么那么多年轻人反对中国？中国就发现有一些人根本就没在看电视，所以在2016年之后呢，中国重新统整，他们发现舆论战还有另外一个部分是必须要去加强的，就是在网络上面。
Just 1 year after refocusing on cyberspace, China succeeded in getting 10,000 people to march through Taipei in protest at a purported ban on ghost money and firecrackers. That plan was an entirely falsified rumor, ultimately traced back to a content farm run by the Chinese government. The following year, a disinformation attack which would become emblematic of the entire conflict once again broke down the barrier between cyberspace and reality.
有一年，日本的关西遭受台风，当时全世界的游客都卡在机场里面。当时有一个讯息丢出来，
报道说中国派了车来接观光客，然后就说台湾的外交官失职，没有办法去抢救台湾的观光客，而是中国的官方做得很好。
这次真真切切地体会到，在这个时候，国家对你的重要性有多大。另外，滞留的旅客中也有一些台湾同胞，询问能不能一起上车，得到的答案是，如果觉得自己是中国人，就能上车。
国内的新闻跟进，就成为一个真实的驻关西的代表处的总领事，没有能力协助，别国却可以。隔天，我们这位苏代表他就没有来上班，驻处的人员到他的宿舍去看，发现他结束自己的生命，被网络大量的恶意讯息攻击到他受不了。
那这个悲剧的事件很明显是假讯息造成的，中国根本没有派车的能力，那个是关西机场公司自己去派车做撤离的动作，台湾人也有撤离。
后来调查人员查出说，第一封那个讯息是来自于中国安徽，所以我们就发现假错讯息是可以真实的去伤害生命。
Disinformation in Taiwan, as elsewhere, is ultimately designed to increase polarization and break down trust across the whole of society. 。
大家以前应该很玩过那种 Facebook 的小游戏，你只要 click 说你 authorize， 它就可以取得你所有你这个人在哪里按赞过，在哪里加入过什么社团，在哪里留言，全部的档案是可以抓下来的。中国在那个时候做了非常多心理测验。我觉得从那个时候开始就变得非常危险。为什么？因为他知道我们这一群人喜欢什么，这群人喜欢看可爱动物的影片，这群人喜欢算命，所以他把很多人分类出来之后呢，他就开始制造内容农场。他就想用不同的方式去吸引不同的人，然后慢慢把有利中国、诋毁美国、诋毁我们的政府相关的思想，不断的渗透到每一个人的心里面。
尤其在 COVID 期间，美国跟台湾的关系非常的巩固，而境外敌对势力分化这样的一个关系的最好的方法，就是让你对美国的信赖产生怀疑。
从去年大概8、9月开始，中国在铺陈说美国怎么在世界各地制造战争，而他挑起战争的方式就是在各地去发明生化武器。他会引用很多学者的话，那听起来好像也是真的。那接触久了之后呢，大家就会觉得说，哇，这个美国实在是有点可恶，到处挑起战争。这个时候呢，突然他泄露一份假的文件，说美国已经准备在台湾建造这个生物实验室，然后台湾的报纸就把它登到头版。因为已经有人听了1年多的刚刚那个 conspiracy， 就他第一个反应就是完了，美国要在台湾引起战争了。
那这样会造成民心上面的不安啊，认为美国是为了自己的利益，它不是我们真正的民主跟人权价值的盟友，用这种方式来分化台湾跟美国的友谊，然后去深化社会的分化跟对立。
The Rand Corporation found that these campaigns have both driven political and social polarization and widened perceived generational divides. Public opinion research found Taiwanese to be so divided as to make personal politics a defining factor in finding a partner and marrying children. And as social unity continues to unravel, a rising tide of cyber attacks threatens the island's physical infrastructure. This is one of Taiwan's largest cybersecurity facilities, in Wangdingyu's electoral district of Tainan. With its network of trackers and digital honeypots, the facility has helped researchers prove what many have long suspected, that Taiwan is the #1 target of cyber attacks anywhere outside Ukraine. While cyber and information attacks do belong to separate branches of warfare, in an era of combined operations, battle lines are increasingly blurred. Following then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan in 2022, hackers hijacked displays in convenience stores and public spaces across Taiwan to broadcast attacks on Pelosi and her supporters.
大家想象，如果万一发生在敌军攻击的时候，突然间用深度造假的影像或假讯息，透过台湾到处都有的超市，告诉台湾民众，我们政府已经投降了，大家不要恐慌，放下武器。会造成什么问题？
And with this growing force, disinformation attacks launched against Taiwan are splintering off to crash land far beyond their intended isle.
A dangerous virus is spreading rapidly in China, and U.S. officials are very worried that it could come here.
Ill after returning from the CDC are now here in Washington State monitoring.
One person passed away overnight.
There's a patient at Evergreen Hospital.
I presume authorities are expecting more cases and the possibility that, it could spread.
2020年3月1号，其实我本身就在 COVID-19 这个肺炎发生的 Evergreen Hospital 在 Washington State。COVID-19 发生的当天，我就开始看到中文的社交媒体上面出现美国民众在抢生活物资啊，在抢口罩啊，在抢卫生纸啊。所以第二天我就到 QFC Store， 食物所有的水、卫生纸通通都在。那为什么我在微信啊、微博啊、台湾的新闻？我看到的是一个不一样的世界。大概是第二天的下午，华人开始涌进 Home Depot， 涌进 Costco。那个时候，美国的新闻也报道了。
One item that no one really can seem to find right now is toilet paper.
Have you been to the grocery store lately?
And just looking around, the shelves are pretty bare.
I have never seen it this busy.
They all seemingly wanted one thing.
It's really lovely.
因为这件事情，我们特别去做了溯源。我们发现微博上面有一个账号， 他拿过去的这种美国民众在超市里面打架啊，或者怎么样的影片，他说这个是他们在抢购食物啊、抢购卫生纸啊、抢购口罩。每次他发送一个消息，你就可以看到成千上万的账号就会跟着转发。我们其实最早观察到这个卫生纸之乱，就是我们在看到台湾开始有散布这方面的消息，那民众就去疯抢。即使是身在美国的美国民众，他看到这些消息不断的出现，他就会 motivate 他去做，赶快去买卫生纸、买口罩的事情。所以它其实就变成一个假消息弄假成真的过程。
所以为什么我刚刚讲初期2016到18年有一段时间中国做的不怎么样，是因为中国在对外开始做资讯认知相关攻击的时候，他都会 apply 他在国内怎么做，他就对其他人怎么做。但其实你在国内有网络管控啊，所以你用一样的对内维稳的手法，去以为这样对外就会有用，缘木求鱼。然后呢，对台湾的了解很多都是透过当时的国民党。那这个在2014年之后，就我讲的太阳花之后烟消云散，所以2015、2016开始他自己做了，收集情报啊，收集个资啊，慢慢 test， 慢慢试出一套方法来。试出来之后呢，这一套一定会被应用到其他的国家。
So you can see Taiwan is like a test bed. You will try the strategy in Taiwan, and in that call us the real chaos. You will see the same misinformation operate in other social media, other country.
所以，我们台湾如果遭受这样的攻击，是全世界受害。
And heading into 2024, democracy already has enough threats to deal with.
It is a pivotal year for democracies.
More than half the global population is heading to the polls in a groundbreaking year of elections.
So it's about 4.2 billion people, and that's never happened before.
Experts are sounding a warning about the potential for a massive upswing in misinformation.
Right now, we are facing, as a democracy all around the world, mainly the same threats, the same challenges.
If you thought 2020 was intense, 2024 makes the last election look easy.
The sheer number and depth of the spread of these rumors online that could be harmful not only to the democratic process, but to public safety and public health is quite staggering. And I worry what that's going to mean for democracy around the world.
In a year with democracy on the ballot and autocracy on the march, Taiwan's role in the fight against disinformation could hardly be clearer.
不管是疫苗、民生物资相关的假消息，很多我们是会发现它先在台湾发生，那之后在其他国家再一个又一个用同样的策略发生。那我们把这件事情发表之后，国际伙伴跟我们讲说，我们是全世界假消息的最前线，这 fine line of the misinformation war。
I'm usually a little skeptical of the term war, but despite that,
For every war that has ever gone on, there has always been an informational element. And now that informational element is much more accessible to any actor that wishes to access it.
The goal really is to dismantle the machinery of democracy, bottom up, through eroding trust, through flooding the zone with mis and disinformation, getting people to not trust their own eyes, getting people not to trust their political leaders or institutions.
它已经是战争的一部分，它要不然是武装冲突的前兆，要不然就是混合性的战争。
In the particular example of Taiwan and the information operations that are directed against it, it probably is appropriate to use that word or think of it within that paradigm.
如果你认为假错讯息的攻击、网络的攻击是战争行为的一部分，我们不仅在战争中，我们已经被攻击很久。
光是他们对我们的骇客攻击，看起来跟战争是完全没有两样的。他法律战也在做，他舆论战也在做，他心战也在做。如果他今天能够说服台湾的群众用舆论战的方式，让大家觉得中国是很好的，或者他用法律框架的方式，让其他的国家无法进来，那他真的是可以几天之内就把台湾干掉。
所以你说它是不是一个战争？这当然是一个战争。
认知作战就是制度之间的作战，是民主制度跟威权制度之间的战争，是一场无烟硝的战争。
I was asked to testify to the January 6th Commission in the US Congress. I said to them, democracy dies with the lies. Democracy dies with the lies.
With the war advancing and new weapons on the battlefield, is Taiwan prepared to defend the front line? How much responsibility falls on the media, the courts, civil society? While the weapons of this war might be immaterial, the wounds they inflict can be devastating. Taiwan must hold on to freedom and truth not only for itself, but as a bulwark against the growing expansionist greed of autocracy. Can Taiwan survive? Broken news.